Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about one of the most dramatic and shocking moments in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. A massive blast has once again destroyed the Crimea Bridge, sending flames and smoke into the night sky and leaving President Vladimir Putin reportedly stunned and enraged. This bridge, often called Putin's Pride, is not just a physical link between Russia and Crimea. It's a powerful symbol of Moscow's control and dominance. But now, that symbol lies broken once again, and the world is watching how Russia will respond to this devastating attack. Just after midnight, witnesses near the Kerch Strait reported hearing a thunderous explosion that shook the ground for miles. Within moments, the sky above Crimea was lit by fire. Videos soon surfaced online, showing huge flames consuming the bridge and thick columns of smoke rising into the darkness. The powerful explosion tore through the structure, collapsing sections and cutting off the vital connection between mainland Russia and the Crimean Peninsula. Russian authorities were quick to label it a terrorist act and accused Ukraine of being behind the attack. Within hours, traffic was suspended, emergency teams rushed to the scene, and the area was sealed off as investigators tried to assess the full extent of the damage. For the second time in the span of the war, the Crimean Bridge, the pride of Russian engineering and one of the most guarded structures in the country, has been struck and partially destroyed. The blast was so intense that even nearby residents felt the shockwaves. Many said the explosion was larger and more coordinated than the 2022 attack that first damaged the bridge. This time, witnesses reported seeing flashes of light from the water moments before the explosion, suggesting that sea drones or underwater explosives could have been used. Experts later noted that Ukraine's military has developed advanced maritime drones capable of carrying hundreds of kilograms of explosives, making them a likely weapon in this strike. As the flames spread across the structure, emergency crews struggled to contain the fire. Videos from the scene showed fuel tankers burning on the rail section of the bridge, while parts of the roadway collapsed into the sea. The destruction looked massive, and satellite images taken the next morning confirmed that at least one section of the bridge was completely destroyed, while others suffered significant damage. For Moscow, this is a nightmare scenario. The Crimea Bridge isn't just a strategic asset. It's a powerful symbol of Russia's claim over Crimea, which it annexed in 2014. Putin personally opened the bridge in 2018, even driving a truck across it to mark the moment. It was meant to showcase Russian power and permanence in the region. Now, with the bridge burning once again, that image of control has been shattered. Russian state media tried to control the narrative, describing the situation as under control, and assuring citizens that repairs were already underway. But the reality on the ground told a different story. The bridge remained closed for hours, vehicles and cargo stranded on both sides. Long lines formed as panicked residents of Crimea tried to flee the peninsula, fearing further strikes or isolation. The one safe lifeline connecting Crimea to Russia now seemed like a dangerous target in the middle of a war zone. Ukraine's officials did not immediately take responsibility, but statements from senior figures hinted that this was part of a broader strategy to weaken Russia's grip on Crimea. One advisor to President Zelensky posted cryptic comments online, suggesting that any structure used to supply the occupation forces was temporary. Though Kiev's government maintained official silence, few doubted that Ukraine was behind the precision strike. Strategically, the destruction of the Crimea Bridge deals a heavy blow to Russia's military logistics. The bridge has been a critical supply route for transporting troops, ammunition, and equipment to southern Ukraine, especially in the regions of Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. Disabling this connection forces Russia to reroute supplies through the occupied territories, a slower and riskier process that stretches their resources and weakens their ability to sustain frontline operations. This latest attack also reveals how Ukraine's military strategy has evolved. Instead of focusing solely on land battles, Kiev has been targeting key infrastructure that sustains the Russian war machine. Hitting the Crimea Bridge is not just about physical destruction. It's psychological warfare. It sends a message to Russia and the world that Ukraine can strike deep into territories that Moscow considers secure. The reaction in Moscow was immediate and furious. Reports from Kremlin sources indicated that Putin was briefed about the explosion within minutes. His response, according to insiders, was one of shock and rage. The Russian president called for an emergency meeting of the Security Council, vowing revenge and promising that those responsible would regret their actions. In the hours that followed, Russian missiles began striking Ukrainian cities, targeting power stations and infrastructure in a familiar pattern of retaliation. But despite the heavy retaliation, many analysts believe the damage to Russia's image may be far greater than any military loss. For the second time, Ukrainian forces have managed to strike what was thought to be one of Russia's most secure structures. The message is clear. No matter how much Moscow spends on defense and surveillance, Ukraine can find its way through. The humiliation is undeniable, especially for Putin, who had built his political legacy on the narrative of restoring strength and stability to Russia. Internationally, the attack drew mixed reactions. Western nations refrained from publicly celebrating the incident, though many officials privately acknowledged the strategic brilliance of the move. Analysts in Washington and London pointed out that the Crimea Bridge has been a legitimate military target, since it serves as a supply route for occupying forces. Meanwhile, Moscow's allies condemned the attack, calling it a dangerous escalation. For the people of Crimea, however, the impact was immediate and personal. Many woke up to the sound of explosions and the sight of their only bridge in flames. Supply shortages quickly followed as shipments of food and fuel were halted. Panic spread as residents feared isolation, with some reports showing long queues at gas stations and supermarkets. The sense of security that Russia had promised after annexation now feels like an illusion. The images of the burning bridge quickly spread across the world, dominating headlines and social media feeds. For Ukrainians, the sight was one of triumph and pride, a symbol of defiance against a larger invader. For Russians, it was a bitter reminder of vulnerability. Each explosion, each attack on the bridge, chips away at the myth of invincibility that Putin has worked so hard to maintain. The question now is, how will Russia respond? Putin's government has often used such incidents to justify escalations, whether through missile strikes or mobilization of additional troops. But this time things might be different. Russia's resources are stretched thin, and public patience is wearing down. Many Russians are beginning to question how a bridge so heavily guarded and constantly monitored could be struck again. The failure raises doubts about the competence of Russian intelligence and military protection. For Ukraine, the operation demonstrates not just military capability, but also intelligence precision. Striking the bridge at night, when civilian traffic is minimal, shows a careful calculation to avoid unnecessary casualties while maximizing psychological impact. The timing of the attack, just as Russia was preparing for new offensives in southern Ukraine, also suggests strategic coordination meant to disrupt and delay those plans. As experts analyze the footage, Some believe this attack might have been even more sophisticated than previous ones. The use of combined air and sea drones could indicate Ukraine's growing technological edge in asymmetric warfare. This new generation of warfare relies not on massive armies, but on precision, innovation, and speed, and Ukraine seems to have mastered it. The destruction of the Crimea Bridge also sends a message beyond the battlefield. It signals to Russia's allies and to the global community that the conflict is far from over and that Ukraine remains capable of striking targets. It also places political pressure on Moscow to justify its ongoing campaign and explain why critical infrastructure remains so vulnerable despite massive spending on defense. As the flames died down and daylight revealed the true scale of destruction, one thing became clear. This attack will have lasting consequences. The bridge may be repaired again, but each time it is hit, its symbolic power weakens. The repeated strikes transform it from a monument of power into a reminder of failure. Putin's shock is not just over the physical damage, but over what it represents. The bridge stood as a testament to Russia's annexation of Crimea, a declaration that the peninsula was permanently under Moscow's control. Now, each explosion serves as a reminder that nothing about that control is permanent. For Ukraine, that's a powerful message not only to Russia, but also to its own people and allies, that their struggle is making an impact. The psychological ripple effects of this strike extend deep into Russian society. Ordinary Russians, already weary from economic sanctions and military losses, now face the embarrassment of seeing one of their proudest symbols burning on live television. State propaganda can only do so much to hide reality. As more Russians see these images, trust in the government's ability to protect them continues to erode. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, morale is soaring. After months of brutal fighting and sacrifices, victories like these, even symbolic ones, provide a surge of national pride. They remind Ukrainians that their resistance is working, that their courage and persistence can challenge even a superpower. In a war defined by endurance, moments like this matter deeply. The future of the Crimea Bridge remains uncertain. Russia will undoubtedly attempt to rebuild it again, pouring more money and resources into reconstruction. But the question remains, how many times can it be rebuilt before its purpose is lost? Every time it burns, it becomes less a bridge of connection and more a monument to the futility of war. The massive blast that destroyed the bridge this time may have lasted only seconds, but its political and emotional shockwaves will last far longer. It reshapes strategies, undermines confidence, and changes the perception of power in the region. For Putin, this is a wound that will be difficult to heal. For Ukraine, it's another step toward reclaiming its occupied lands and redefining the course of the war. As the sun rose over the Kerch Strait the morning after the explosion, the sight was haunting: twisted metal, broken concrete, and smoke drifting into the calm sea. It stood as a stark image of how quickly the tide can turn in this conflict. The bridge that once represented dominance now represents defiance. This strike is more than an act of war. It's a symbol of how determination, intelligence, and precision can challenge brute force. The Crimea Bridge will likely be repaired again, but its repeated destruction tells a story that no reconstruction can erase. In the end, the massive blast that destroyed the Crimea Bridge is not just a headline, it's a turning point. It reveals cracks in Russia's power, showcases Ukraine's resilience, and reminds the world that in this war, symbols can be as powerful as weapons. And as the flames fade, one truth remains: the war is far from over, and every explosion brings us closer to the moment when the world will have to face the final question: how will it all end?